Hello everybody, sorry, Edam from the future here. I just want to state that this video was originally part of a segment of a much longer video talking about all stories of the Company of Friends anthology. Sadly, however, due because the video was extremely long, I was having trouble exporting it. So I've decided to release them separately. This one will be a part of it. So enjoy. I'll see you next time. So now we're on to the Lizzie story, written by Alan Barnes, who, as a writer, he's done so much Doctor Who content for comic books and audio dramas. The guy's portfolio is immense. Now, this story is, of course, the one with Lizzie in it. Lizzie is a companion of the comics. For those of you who don't know, Marvel UK, which is now Panini, used to publish, actually they still do, publish a series of magazines. Used to be called Doctor Who Weekly, now it's called Doctor Who Magazine. And usually it's like behind the scenes information about your favourite stories, some interviews with the cast and crew, some upcoming projects. But one of the main selling points of the magazine is that they would have a segment of a comic book story inside an issue. And of course, when 1996 came around with Paul McGann's Doctor becoming the current Doctor, so did he become the current Doctor in the Doctor Who magazine. Now, Liz is a character I'm actually semi-familiar with. I haven't actually read any of her stories, but I do know a bit about her. She's basically a fangirl on the TARDIS. In fact, in the opening monologue she has at the start of the story, she actually explains that she's a huge fan of Star Trek, The Next Generation, and she's kind of disappointed the TARDIS doesn't have a holodeck. And she kind of geeks out at like nerd culture and stuff. So that's basically the premise of her character. And also an interesting note is that she is actually the first lesbian companion, which is actually one of like the things. Like when the Doctor took her, she was a very young girl who didn't know her sexuality. But when she was leaving the comic books, she actually fell in love with a woman, and her relationship, and then she had a relationship with a woman and left the TARDIS. Which there's a little segment that kind of reference that in this story. Obviously, chronologically, this takes place before that. So, what did I think about this segment, Liz's story? It's fun. It's really fun. It's clear that Alan Barnes is having a right old farce. He's playing around with the silly conventions of comic books. This story actually does feel like a comic book storyline. A nice little, I believe they call it a one shot, a story which would only fill up a single issue, which would fill up a much more a comedic, sillier tone. And that's what this is, a really silly, crazy idea, which I think could only really work with this companion. The story starts off with actually a completely different story, as we hear Liz narrating it. Now, Liz is actually played by Jeremiah Rupert. She does a pretty good job. I think so far she's the weakest of the three, but she did a really good job and she's pretty fun and dynamic in this role. She reads out this story about the man and, what's his name? Courtman Dread or something like that. And she's basically reading a comic book storyline. This really pantomimic, comic booky, silly, ridiculous story. And when she gets up to the end of the issue, it's about to reveal the main character's face, one of the big mysteries. It's actually a homage to 2000 AD, where one of the characters, Judge Dredd, we never actually see his face. And Alan Barnes is playing to the 2000 AD stereotypes that a lot of really bad 2000 AD comic books are. They're really violent, they got really ridiculous, violent names, like Killer Colwog or something like that. Something really, really ridiculous. And she basically explains to the Doctor that that the last issue of this particular comic run was never seen by anybody. She once had an experience where she went to the comic book to pick up the last issue, but when it was there, apparently the person before her bought it, and when she tried to track down another issue of it, it turned out that nobody has actually ever seen the final issue of this comic book. And so she kind of tricks the Doctor into taking her to Stordrick, a little village that the Doctor's appeared in many times, both in comic books and in audio dramas, in which Lizzie is actually was so close to getting this comic, and she basically plans to get there before the person before her bought it, and so she can read and find out who this court guy, what his face actually is. And she kind of tricks the Doctor into trying to find out this this little nerdy detail. I really love this premise. Essentially, she's going back in time to try and find out one of the mysteries that's been bogging her life. But it's not a massive event. It's not like it's not like one of the big mysteries. It's not like who killed Kennedy or you know, all of those like big mass conspiracies. It's a little thing that she knows kind of would affect the timelines if she just went back personally. It's something which is actually, as a nerd, I can actually really relate. If I was in the TARDIS, if the Doctor came up and met me in the TARDIS, the first thing I would do is go to the 1920s and watch Midnight at London. London at Midnight. The famous silent horror film with Lon Chaney. I would do that. So personally, I can relate to that. I really like this little premise. I think Alan Barnes kind of plays it up. This is a story which could have had a really great personal impact on Lizzie and maybe her relationship with the Doctor, and can talk about like the great mysteries of personal history, and would love and use the ability of time travel to get all of these wonderful, great hidden pieces of artwork so that you can appreciate them. But the story never really does that. It plays off more like a silly, fast conspiracy in the style of a cheesy comic book. Not to say that there's anything wrong with this particular story being a homage to the silly comic books that the companion originally appeared in, but it's still, I was kind of disappointed by the fact it didn't go in this much more personal route. Lizzie tries to actually read this comic book. However, when she gets so close in the comic book shop to androids that actually take the form of characters in the comic book series that she loves, comes in, wipes her memory, and basically destroys the comic book. And basically it turns out that the secret of this little conspiracy is alien related. So basically it's like a lot less It's a silly version of Ghostlight. Sense. That's really, it's like a parody of Ghostlight if you think about it too hard. Wow, that's really hilarious. So the Doctor and Lizzie actually go to the company that makes the comic books, where it's revealed that that the comic books creators are actually these aliens that have made up these stories using stuff they know about outer space and is intertwined into the story. And originally they think that the Doctor and Lizzie are producers and stuff, but no, they're just investigating this little conspiracy. Now Lizzie acts she's really hyper. When she gets so close, she grasps and she's like, come on, let me see what the comic book looks like. There's a great moment where the Doctor introduces himself and the producer's like, so what did you think of the comic? But Lizzie's like, don't care about his opinion. I absolutely love it. I think these comics are brilliant. So she has that. She's basically on sugar, and she has a whole new energy of a companion, which I've never really seen before. I've never seen a companion so. She's basically turned up to 11 in a way. She's constantly she's got opinions and she's got things to say, and she's really enthusiastic, and she has this mass creativity in a sense, and she's just bursting with life. If this story does anything good, it's showing Lizzie as a character. Some might say it's a bit silly and it's a bit self-insert, but I think it does play to its strength of being silly. I just wish the story around it took a little bit more serious tone and delved deeper into our characters. Characters then lock the people in the Doctor and Lizzie in the cupboard, whether the androids appear and actually transform the crew members of this company into inanimate objects. When the Doctor and Lizzie break out, they see that the entire building is taken over for a comedy company for girls. I believe the comic they are created is called Ponies Are the Best or something stupid like that. And Lizzie is really disgusted by this. But later on, the Doctor basically works out that the androids are around and they're hiding everything. Nothing's really changed. It's just they were there for so long. And it turns out that the person controlling these androids is the court killer guy from the comic books. It turns out he's actually a real figure that the comic books writers, the alien comic book writers, kind of based their the character off, and he is threatened to kill the Doctor and Lizzie because they've seen the final issue and they know of his secret identity. But everybody is building this up that you really don't want to see his secret identity. You really don't want to know who he is. And the court guy is fine. You want to know? And he takes off his mask. And what comes out then is this really dorky voice. It's are you happy now? And Liz is you're a nerd. You're just a silly nerd. This dorky character. And he basically goes into this backstory of his in that he's actually a human from the future who, basically the law got completely corrupted, and he got inspired because he was a huge fan of this comic book series to take up the mantle of this character. And when he discovered time travel, he read the final issue, the mysterious final issue, and was so horrified as a fan that he decided to delete the entire final issue from the rest of the timeline. And Lizzie's what? It can't be that bad. I need to know! And so she gets the copy from the producer and she reads the final issue. It turns out in the comic book anyway, that the court dread, the courtroom killer guy, is actually a woman, which frustrates Lizzie, and she's basically like, and what I really like about this is like, she's like, no, it can't be. It doesn't make any sense. Girls shouldn't be playing main part in boys' comics, you know. Not seeing the irony in that she is a female character who's from a comic book. And the Doctor even is like, I don't understand, what's the problem, what's the issue? And she's like, no, that doesn't make any sense because of blah, 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 blah. One thing she actually states is that it doesn't make sense because one of the character's love interest is also a girl. And she's like, I'm confused, I don't understand that. Again, playing up to the fact that in chronological sense, she will discover that she's a lesbian. It's just a small little nod, I guess, to that. But in the sense of this being in the comic book, it turns out that the alien race that writes these comics, there are actually a lot of feminine names which humans know as girls' names, are actually boys' names in their culture. So I think like one of the names is like Elizabeth or Victoria is actually a boy's name in their culture, and so the Doctor and Lizzie end that particular era of the story, and that's the story. This little segment was okay. I liked it. I had a lot of fun. It felt like a fun little parody of nerd culture and silly. But for what the idea had, I think we could have delved a bit deeper and gotten an idea which hasn't really been done before and could have really become something better. And I think maybe the story is better than I'm giving it credit for, but when I realise what the story is doing and what I think the story was going to do with it, I kind of disappointed myself. So yeah, it was okay, it was good, it was a nice little fun and laugh. Lizzie, I don't think she's a good companion, she's good, the idea of like a nerdy thing, and she's very unique. But I don't think, at least going off this story, there's enough there in a comic. Maybe she's really great in the comics. I need to read them, especially The Flood, which was supposed to be the 8th Doctor's final comic book story and is the first 8th Doctor who ever encountered the Cybermen in a story, in any form of media. So that's very interesting. But the Lizzie story here is okay, it's okay. So on to the last story, and we'll say hello to Mary Shelley.